Um, I met my wife online, and she lived in Nebraska. I lived in beautiful Colorado, and I wanted her to come visit me. And I thought I'd go up to the beautiful Rocky Mountains and videotape the surrounding area, send her some nice chocolates and some flowers, and maybe she'd come. Well, on my way up to videotape the surrounding area, there were some cars pulled off to the side of the road as I got close to the foothills, and they were looking up above some power lines, and off to the south, off to my left, I looked up, and sure enough, there was what I thought was a hot air balloon. Actually ended up being a rather large metallic, UFO.
Right.
It actually terrified me because I didn't believe in this stuff at all. And the first thing I thought of, it's got to be some kind of military experiment. But as I got close to it, first of all, I noticed it didn't make any noise. And it was approximately about 50, 60 foot above the power line, so it was very close. Mm-hmm. And it was just, the way it maneuvered was almost impossible. There was no way any conventional aircraft could do that. And the fact that other people were there kind of solidified what I was seeing. I got my video camera out. Luckily, I had my video camera with me at the time, and I thought, nobody's going to believe me. So, I started videotaping this object, and it slowly kind of maneuvered back and forth, and then just corkscrewed away. It was. Well, we had a situation where we drove to Pennsylvania, and I picked up my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and I had some business out there, and I was with my wife and my best friend. And on the way there, we thought we saw something, but on the way back, there was no doubt there was a UFO pretty much following us through 2.5 states. And then in September, was it September 21st? I was working at a retail store. I was managing a retail store on a corner of a very busy intersection. And I was closing up shop, and the customers that I just let out came running back, and they said, "There's something above your work." And I went outside thinking somebody's screwing around on the roof. But when I looked up, there was a huge 40-foot in diameter, perfectly round sphere just blinking rapidly just right above my work. Pretty paranoid, It literally took me about 3 years to come to terms with this. That's how much of a skeptic I was. But really what makes my case so different compared to everybody else is most of the stuff that happens only seems to happen with a lot of people around. And I'm talking, high caliber media people and you name it. Radio talk show hosts. It doesn't matter. They've all seen things. Question is why. I wished I knew. This object was just hovering there, and there were winds coming out of the west, and this thing was not moving. Eventually, it just kind of slowly floated away and disappeared, and I locked up my store, and I quickly drove home because I was getting kind of paranoid. I didn't want anything to happen, so I was supposed to go out to dinner that evening, and I was... my best friend and my sister were waiting for me, and I ran upstairs to the apartment, and I got my video camera, got my sister, got my friend, because as soon as I got back home, this object, whatever it was, this UFO, was actually hovering above my apartment complex. And let me tell you, I was pretty scared. And so we all came down, I videotaped it. Never actually went out to dinner that evening. My friend left about 11 o'clock, and I had a real bad headache, so I went to bed right away. And so then at about, I think it was about 2:30, there was a knock at the door, which is not typical of what you hear when it comes to this abduction phenomenon. But I thought, whoever it was, they were knocking for a very long time because it woke me up. And I thought, first thing I thought of is, maybe my friend broke down, or maybe the neighbor was drunk and got locked out of his apartment. I wasn't sure, but I got up and I went to go answer the door, and my sister had already answered the door. And my bedroom was down the hallway, so I had a straight view of the door. And it looked like there were 3 people. I thought they were teenagers because they were small. And as I got close, I noticed that my sister was kind of staring at the ceiling, just like she was still asleep. And I'm thinking, what in the world? Well, when I got a little bit closer, it's like, why are these people wearing costumes? Are they going to rob us? And then all of a sudden it just went crazy. I was thinking, they're going to rob us. I was yelling at my sister not to let them in because they were going to rob us. But what's interesting, as I got closer, I realized that these were probably not costumes and probably not masks, because I could see their facial features move. And there was a female and two males, which is, again, not typical of what you hear about the abduction phenomenon.
Right.
And the female came forward and grabbed my wrist, and it's really hard to explain. It's like trying to explain the color red to somebody that's never seen red before, but a thought popped into my head. It's okay, it's okay. It wasn't okay. I was screaming, but for whatever reason, nothing came out, and I was doing whatever she wanted me to do. And we lived in a second-story apartment, and she was leading me out to the balcony, and there was a male on either side of me, and I must have gotten frightened enough that I snapped out of whatever trance I was in, and I grabbed one of the males. I was going to throw him off the balcony, and I felt a tap on the back of my head, and I woke up somewhere else. It's really not like any room I can describe. There were no right angles. Everything was rounded. There was no furniture freestanding in the room. Everything seemed to be molded out of the environment, or out of whatever room we were in. And it was the strangest light. In fact, after my experience, some of those new cars started coming out. You know those blue headlights that they have on the newer European cars? That's what the lighting was like in this strange room. And I remember the sickening sweet smells too, but there was no edges. Everything was rounded, and I was literally stuck to a wall. Not like glued, not like strapped down, but like, you know, those centrifugal force rides?
Sure.
It was kind of like that. And I remember seeing this female, whatever it was, walking towards me, and I looked on the wall, and it looked like there were quarter-sized copper pieces embedded in the wall every foot or so. And she put her hand on this lit panel, and it released me. And one of the males came up, and he had this box over his on a strap over his shoulder, and it looked like it was lit internally, and it had a tube that came out the end, and for lack of a better description, it looked like it had a melon baller at the end of it. And I remember they turned me around, and they started doing something to my lower back, and it stung so bad. And again, I felt a tap on the back of my head, and I woke up in the middle of the room. That's the thing. And if you watch TV, you hear about this thing called sleep paralysis. By the way, I personally think it's crap, because it doesn't explain like Benny and Barney Hill's experiences. It doesn't explain Travis Walton, Snowflake, Arizona. He had witnesses there that watched him get taken.
Sure.
And it doesn't explain mine, because I was awake through all of it, and I remembered everything. I couldn't handle what I saw and tried to blow it off as a dream, but when I woke up the next morning, I went to go make pancakes, and my headache was gone. I didn't feel any pain. I didn't feel anything other than, man, I had this really weird dream. And so my sister goes, what in the heck happened to your back? And it kind of flashed back what happened, and I felt on my lower back, and I could feel the holes. There were no pain, no anything, but I could feel with my hand that there were holes there.
Yeah.
So I flipped a lid. I really fell apart. Interestingly enough, because I was having such a hard time, my best friend said, look, there's an organization that deals with this stuff. I looked it up. Let's contact them. And it ended up being MUFON, which is Mutual UFO Network, one of the biggest organizations in the world in regards to UFOs. And luckily, they had their international headquarters in Colorado. So they came over right away, and they said, look, if you've been abducted and you have these scoop marks or any evidence, sometimes what will happen is they fluoresce under black light. Well, all right, that's cool. What they did was they shined a black light on a scrape I had on my knee, nothing. But as soon as they got to those sores on my wrist and on my back, they lit up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is those sores literally healed within like 24 hours to nothing but barely visible scars, except the fluorescing lasted for about 90 days, I think. I was in management, corporate management, retail management. I had a computer repair business. Before that, I qualified for the Olympics. I was going to be a cyclist for the Olympics. I've done a lot of things, but at the time I was in management, retail management.
Okay, correct.
Well, I have twin stepdaughters. They're absolutely drop-dead gorgeous kids. They're 20. They're not really kids anymore, but they're 23 years old. And now, at the time, they were young teenagers. And I had gotten up. This is after some of my experiences that I already started, and I had gotten up to wash my hands or something from watching TV, and I saw movement out of one of the windows. And it's first thing I thought is, oh my God, we got a peeping Tom. Well, this went on off and on for over 3 months. We called the police. We let the neighbors know. We even set up traps outside the window, so if we hear noises, I had a bat by the door.
Yeah.
Well, one of the researchers involved in my case said, hey, you've got a video camera. Why don't you just turn it on night shot, point it towards the window you see the peeping Tom at, and maybe you can catch him and call the cops. Well, that's what I did. I set up the video camera, I put it on night shot, put it towards that window, and I went down the hall and I went in the bathroom and sat on the edge of the bathtub reading a magazine, and I saw 2 flashes of light, and I look out and I see this head pop down.
Okay, let's hold on 1 second there, Stan. So here's the clip. So there's the first flash of light.
Yeah.
Okay, and then take it from there.
Well, then there's a second flash of light, and then if you look down, I see this person, what I thought was a person, drop down like he was looking in our window.
Yeah.
And then I come running out there, and you'll see right at the bottom of the window there.
Here it comes right now. Yep, right at the bottom of the window. You obviously see, it looks like the traditional gray, the big black eyes, the round head right at the bottom, kind of turning around.
And you can see him blink, and you can see his facial features move. But more importantly, the researchers noticed that the infrared on the camcorder actually reflects off his retina on, it would be this eye, I guess.
Right.
So pretty creepy.
Yeah, and it's going to come up again one more time here, and then we'll see you run in at the very end. There it is again. I know our folks at home can see it clearer than you can, and it disappears. Now, did you see this from the house, or did you only see it on the playback?
I saw something, and it ducked down because it saw me looking out the bathroom door.
Right.
My wife thinks that's the funniest thing because I run away like a little girl, because when I see this thing outside, I first thought it was like a little kid running toward the backyard, and it clipped the bush, and then it turned and looked at me, and I knew it was something bizarre. I said that a long time ago. Okay. That's the $1 million question. People who go through these experiences, everybody asks that. And could it be genetics? It sure could be. It seems to run in the family. I found out about 2 years ago my brother had some experiences, which blew me away. I didn't know that. And then it just continues. Even now it continues for whatever reason. Well, it started, I was really having a hard time with this, like I said before, and MUFON said, look, we got to get you help, and we think it would be a good idea for you to go under hypnotic regression. I said, okay, I'll do that. Well, the first hypnotic regression I went under was with a person named Deborah Lindemann, very, very competent hypnotherapist locally here in Colorado. And she asked me, during the regression, she goes, well, do you remember any symbols? I said, yeah, I've got tons of them. I could just write them down. So she handed me this rather large pad of paper, and I just started, within like 20 seconds, I wrote this long thing of equations. Now, you have to understand, unfortunately, I am severely dyslexic, and going to school is pretty tough for me. And I have, if I'm lucky, maybe a 4th or 5th grade math level. And believe it or not, even though I'm an international best-selling author, I can't spell worth a darn. I have to use spell check. So that being said, when I came out of the regression and I looked at this, I started bawling, thinking I'm great, I'm going crazy, I'm writing gibberish. But when they sent it off to, some of the top physicists, they're saying, man, this is very advanced. We don't know what this is. One of them was actually a structure, an electron structure for an element that didn't exist at the time. I did, believe it or not, I was on the radio for a European TV show, or not TV show, radio show out of Rome. And I was sitting back in my chair and I see what I thought was a plane, except the plane isn't moving. So I'm looking at this. It's like, oh my gosh, it dropped straight through the clouds. And I couldn't find my camera, so I got my cell phone and I got a picture of it and sent it to you. I think there's it's my opinion, that's all it is, but there's good and bad out there just like there's good and bad here. There's multiple things out there with multiple agendas. Some experiences are bad, some experiences aren't. All I know for sure is it continues to happen, and to me it's like they're trying to get people to realize that there really is something out there. You have to understand, again, most of the stuff that happens only happens with, a lot of people around. One real good example, we had 2020 Primetime, one of the top producers for 2020 Primetime, come down with another producer named Andrea from Good Morning America, and they had experiences while they were here. They saw 2 huge UFOs. And the producer for 2020 goes to the network and they said, hey, look, we got to do this right. And she was fired. Interesting, because I've had about 12, 13 experiences. I mean, I've woken up in other people's clothing. I've woken up outside with no clothing on, with all the slide boats locked from the inside. That can't explain sleep paralysis. All the way from 3-star generals to you name it. I mean, even some of the researchers that I've involved in my case are ex-naval intelligence. So this is a big deal, and people need to get prepared, because I think the truth is going to come out soon.